This story begins in the summer of 2010, at which time I was 17. I'm female, and at the time, I was living in New York, United States, which is a very crime-ridden city. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's the most dangerous city in the United States. New York is where people who can't afford to live in Vancouver end up residing. At the time, my parents worked a lot. My mom had 2 jobs, one at a crisis hotline, and the other at a women's transition house. My dad was always away on business trips because he worked for the government. Having said all this, my parents weren't able to drive me places, so naturally, I would walk or use public transportation if I had money, which was not very often. It was a hot August day, early in the afternoon, and I had called my friend Susan asking if I could come over to pick up some clothes I had forgotten at her place during the summer, because school was starting soon, and I was going to need them. She said sure, but I wasn't going to be there long because she had plans to hang out with the guy she liked at the time. I explained that it was fine and that I would be over there in about an hour. I said an hour because of how long it would take me to walk over there. I didn't have any money, so I couldn't take the bus. I left the house, and from what I can remember, I was wearing jean shorts, high-top Converse, and I think just a pink zip-up hoodie. I walked about 30 minutes to Central Mall and got on the SkyTrain, which I clearly didn't pay to get on, and no one at the time really did because security rarely checked tickets. I only had to go 1 stop over from where I was, but the ride would shave off 10 minutes of my journey. So I got to her place, and she let me use a duffel bag to pack all my clothes in. I left promptly afterward. As I stepped outside, I thought about how I should go about my journey back home. Then I thought, well, if I go up a few blocks to the right and then take a left, I can follow that street all the way down to where my street is. It was pretty much a straight shot to my house, and although it would take an hour, it was the least complicated route. It was also a really nice day out, so I decided on this and started walking. I'm about 10 minutes or so into my walk, and I'm on the street that will eventually take me to my road. The street I'm on is kind of busy, but nothing crazy. The cars are passing by every other minute or so. I'm used to creepy stares and guys honking at me. It just comes with living in a sleazy city. So when a silver Kia, I want to say, drives past with a middle-aged balding man in it, staring intensely at me, I just brush it off and keep on walking, listening to my music on my pink MP3 player. A few minutes pass, and I get a strange feeling. So I look up, and that's when I barely noticed it. The balding creep was driving past me again, staring me up and down. I start to get a little creeped out, but not too majorly at that point, so I just keep walking. I'm coming up beside a high school parking lot, and I'm just zoning out. But then, I'm getting this tingly feeling through my arms, which I now know as my creep sense. And boy, were they tingling at the time. So I just casually glanced over into the high school parking lot, and you guessed it, the balding creep was sitting in his car, facing me. I quickly averted my gaze and kept walking, hoping that if I just ignored him, maybe he would just get bored and leave me alone. A few meters after, I came to a stoplight. I pressed the button and waited for the little white man and beeping to happen. I noticed the silver Kia drive past, and I breathed a sigh of relief. But only for a moment, because he pulled into the parking lot of the convenience store across the street, and now had his car idling a few feet from the sidewalk. It's my turn across the street, and at this point, I'm getting pretty bad anxiety. He is 100% without a doubt following me, and he obviously doesn't have good intentions. After I passed his car, I hear him drive out onto the street and see him pass me. He wasn't letting up because about 2 blocks up, I see him turn into a side street that I'll soon have to pass. As I got closer, I see him idling there with his car just before the sidewalk, facing me as if to pretend he was going to turn back onto the main road. So I'm freaking out internally, and as I pass him for the millionth goddamn time, I start trying to figure out what the hell I'm gonna do. My heart starts pounding faster and my breathing becomes heavier. I still have a really long way to go, and even if I do make it to my street, I either have the option of going through a really creepy alleyway and a few minutes down a quiet street to my house, this being the shortest route, or I can walk past this shortcut and spend about 10 minutes going around walking through a bunch of quiet streets to my house. So basically, no matter what I decide, I'll be putting myself in the perfect position to get kidnapped, or God knows what, by this damn pedo creep. As all this is going through my head, I see a small Asian woman in front of me, and we are going to pass each other. I contemplate on asking her for help, but I don't want to look like a weirdo and most likely freak her out. So we pass, and I continue on. I'm now in a full-blown panic, and I can't shake the feeling that something is terribly wrong. Eventually, I reach a bus stop. I don't care where the bus is going. I need to get on it. So I start running up to it and jump on out of breath. I explain to the driver that I don't have any money, but that there's a man following me. He nods, and the bus starts moving. As I'm holding onto the safety bars, trying to breathe a bit and process what the hell is going on, a woman, probably 18 to 20 years old, comes up to me and asks me what's going on. I explain everything that happened in a shaky voice. She listened, but to my surprise, she didn't believe me. She said I was just being paranoid. I didn't tell anyone else about the incident after that. So basically, that's my story about being stalked and coming pretty damn close to potentially getting kidnapped by some creepy pedo. After this happened to me, I never felt comfortable being out in public alone, especially wearing shorts, skirts, or basically anything that showed skin. You'd always see me wearing pants and a sweater because I just really didn't want to be an easy target. Just last year, I was driving home from work, a daily routine I had that involved a 20-mile journey from the city to my place. Now, during rush hour, it could get pretty hectic, and on this particular day, it was especially bad. As I merged onto the freeway, I made a split-second decision that ended up with me accidentally cutting off another driver. It wasn't intentional. It was just one of those moments when traffic was so dense, and I misjudged the space. Of course, I felt a little guilty, but within a minute or so, I'd pretty much forgotten about it. I continued on the freeway for about 20 minutes, not paying much attention to the car behind me, even though it was tailing me rather closely. I figured the driver was probably annoyed about my earlier maneuver, and honestly, I kind of thought I deserved it. But things got strange when I exited the freeway at my usual off-ramp, and lo and behold, the car behind me followed suit. It was this old, beaten-up vehicle, and honestly, I couldn't see much about the driver except that it seemed to be a man. He was sticking really close to my bumper, and that's when I started to get this uneasy feeling that maybe he was following me on purpose. To test my theory, I decided to make a sudden turn, but to my dismay, that car mirrored my move perfectly. It was clear now. I was definitely being followed. I began to worry and decided to pull into the nearest gas station, thinking maybe being around other people would discourage this driver from pursuing me. But no. He followed me right into the gas station and positioned his car behind mine, essentially blocking me in. I realized at that moment that my plan might not have been the smartest one. The driver, a guy in his 30s with blonde hair, wasted no time. He came up to my window and started knocking on it so hard I thought it might shatter. He was yelling and cursing at me, and by this point people at the gas station were taking notice of the commotion, and a few of them started walking over. I briefly thought about calling the police, but I hesitated. Fortunately, as the bystanders got closer, the man suddenly retreated to his car and sped off. I felt a wave of relief wash over me as I watched him go. After a few minutes, I gathered my nerves and decided to continue my journey home. The whole way back, I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was being watched, so I kept glancing in my rearview mirror. Thankfully, the man didn't follow me any further. That unsettling incident taught me a powerful lesson about road rage and the importance of safe driving practices. Since then, I've been extra cautious on the road, determined to avoid any similar unnerving encounters in the future. Hello, everyone! If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful or entertaining, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. Your support motivates us to create more content you'll love. Thanks a million. And if you've just subscribed, please drop a comment saying I subscribed. We'd love to welcome you to our community.